The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called with unprecedented urgency. Ambassador Zektar of the Valkyrie Empire stood at the podium, his 4 eyes gleaming with satisfaction as he addressed the gathered representatives of 47 different species. The massive chamber, built into the heart of the space station Nexus Prime, buzzed with nervous energy. Fellow council members, Zektar began, his voice carrying through the translation devices worn by every delegate. Today marks a historic moment for our galaxy. The Valkyrie Empire has successfully completed what many thought impossible. Councillor Thrixana of the peaceful Melody leaned forward in her floating seat, her crystalline form shimmering with concern. Ambassador Zektar, your message was quite vague. What exactly has your empire accomplished? Zektar's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a smile among his species. We have eliminated the human threat once and for all. Their homeworld, Earth, has been reduced to cosmic dust. The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives from dozens of species began speaking at once, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sounds, lights, and pheromones. Council Chairman Mordan, an ancient being whose species had helped establish the council millennia ago, slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor 3 times. Order! Order in this chamber! His telepathic voice boomed in every mind present. Ambassador Zektar, explain yourself immediately. Zektar straightened his imposing form, standing nearly 3 meters tall. 2 standard cycles ago, the human vessel Endeavour discovered our secret mining operation in the Kepler system. When we attempted to negotiate their silence, they refused our generous offer and threatened to report our activities to this very council. Mining operations outside designated territories are strictly forbidden, interrupted Councillor Vashti of the Aquatic Near-ID Collective. The Kepler system was designated as a preservation zone. Precisely why the humans had to be silenced, Zektar replied coldly. They were interfering with legitimate business interests. Murder is not a legitimate response to witnessing illegal activity, Thrixana said, her voice resonating with moral outrage. Zektar waved a dismissive claw. It was not murder. It was pest control. Humans are a young, violent species with no real contribution to galactic civilization. Their removal eliminates a future threat to peaceful development. The chamber fell silent except for the ambient hum of the life support systems. Many delegates appeared shocked, while others seemed to be calculating the political implications of this announcement. Councillor Rixel of the militaristic Korth Dominion was the first to break the silence. How exactly did you accomplish this destruction? Human defensive capabilities, while primitive, are not insignificant for a Class C civilization. We used our new stellar manipulation technology, Zektar said proudly. A series of quantum resonance bombs placed at strategic points around their star caused it to go supernova. The entire system was sterilized in minutes. You destroyed an entire star system? Chairman Mordan's mental voice carried undertones of horror that transcended species barriers. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've eliminated a problem before it could grow into a real threat, Zektar replied confidently. Humans were aggressive, unpredictable, and showed disturbing tendencies toward rapid technological advancement. Better to end their story now than face them as equals later. Councillor Jexera of the Insectoid Hive Collective chittered nervously. The humans were under council protection as an emerging species. They had been granted observer status just 5 cycles ago. Observer status means nothing, Zektar scoffed. They had no voting rights, no real protections, and no significant allies. They were tolerated, nothing more. They were sentient beings with the right to exist, Thrixana said, her crystalline form now glowing with anger. Your empire has committed genocide on an unimaginable scale. Genocide is such an ugly word, Zektar replied. I prefer preemptive problem solving. Chairman Mordan raised his staff again. The Valkyrie Empire will face immediate sanctions for this act. An investigation committee will be formed to determine appropriate punishment. Sanctions? Zektar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. What sanctions? The Valkyrie Empire controls 30% of the galaxy's trade routes and owns the largest fleet in known space. You need us far more than we need you. The truth of his words hung heavy in the chamber. The Valkyrie Empire had grown incredibly powerful over the past few centuries, and their economic influence touched nearly every world in the Council's jurisdiction. Besides, Zektar continued, the humans are gone. What's done cannot be undone. I suggest we move forward and focus on the benefits this brings to all of us. Benefits? Counselor Yilmar of the amphibious Saltanto questioned with disgust. Of course. The Sol system contained valuable resources that can now be harvested without interference. The mining rights alone will generate enormous wealth for council members willing to participate. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably, but Zektar noticed that some were listening with interest. Economic opportunity had a way of overriding moral concerns in galactic politics. Furthermore, he added, humanity's destruction serves as an example to other young species who might consider interfering with established powers. Order will be maintained. Counselor Rixell leaned forward. You mentioned stellar manipulation technology. This is far beyond anything the Valkyrie Empire has demonstrated before. We have been developing new weapons and technologies in secret, Zektar admitted proudly. Our scientists have made breakthrough after breakthrough. Perhaps it's time the galaxy recognized who the true leaders should be. The implications of this statement were not lost on the assembled delegates. The Valkyrie Empire was not just announcing the destruction of humanity, they were demonstrating their technological superiority and challenging the existing power structure. Chairman Mordun's ancient mind processed countless possibilities. This council session is adjourned pending investigation of these claims. All delegates are confined to quarters until further notice. Investigation? Zektar laughed again. Send your investigators to the Sol system, Chairman. They'll find nothing but expanding gas and debris. The humans are history. As security forces began escorting delegates from the chamber, conversations broke out in dozens of languages. Some species expressed horror at the genocide, others seemed more concerned about the shift in galactic power dynamics, and a few appeared to be already calculating how to profit from the new situation. Zektar remained behind, speaking quietly with his aide, a smaller Valkyrie named Quexlan. The announcement went perfectly, he said in their native clicking language. Fear and greed will keep the council paralyzed long enough for us to consolidate our position. What about the investigation teams? Quexlan asked. Let them investigate. By the time they reach the Sol system and confirm what happened, we'll have secured agreements with enough council members to make sanctions meaningless. The galaxy belongs to the strong, and we have just proven our strength. Meanwhile, in her private quarters, Counselor Thrixana was composing an encrypted message to her home world. The Melody had always prided themselves on their moral stance and had been among humanity's few genuine advocates in the council. The humans are gone, she transmitted sadly. An entire species wiped from existence by Valkyrie ambition. We failed them as allies and as guardians of justice. On the other side of the station, Counselor Rixell was having a very different conversation with his military advisors via secure hologram. The Valkyrie have just declared themselves the dominant power in the galaxy, he told them. We need to assess our defense capabilities immediately. If they can destroy a star, no world is safe from their reach. In his luxurious suite, Zektar was celebrating with expensive fermented nectar from his home world. The plan had worked perfectly. Humanity's destruction would serve multiple purposes, eliminating witnesses to illegal mining operations, demonstrating Valkyrie military might, and creating an atmosphere of fear that would make other species more willing to accept Valkyrie leadership. Sir, Quexlan interrupted his celebration, we're receiving reports from our monitoring stations. Several council species are mobilizing their fleets. Expected, Zektar replied dismissively. They're scared and trying to show strength they don't possess. Our stellar manipulation weapons make traditional fleets obsolete. Let them waste resources positioning ships that can't protect them from starkillers. What about the neutral species? The ones who might ally against us? They'll fall in line once they see the benefits of cooperation. Trade agreements, protection contracts, resource sharing, we can offer them more alive and compliant than they could ever take through resistance. As the station's artificial night cycle began, most delegates tried to process the day's shocking revelations. The destruction of an entire species was unprecedented in recorded galactic history. Even the most warlike civilizations had typically limited their conflicts to military targets or strategic locations. In the Council's historical archives, an automated system was already updating humanity's entry in the galactic database. Their status changed from observer species, emerging civilization to extinct hostile action. The cold bureaucracy of record-keeping reduced the death of billions to a simple database modification. But, across the galaxy, other changes were beginning. Human colonies that had been established outside the Sol system received fragmentary reports of something terrible happening to Earth. Deep space monitoring stations detected the distinctive radiation signature of a stellar collapse where the Sun should have been. And, in the furthest reaches of explored space, automated human probes continued their missions, carrying messages of greeting from a species that no longer existed to broadcast them. The Valkyrie Empire had indeed demonstrated their power, but they had also created something that no one in that council chamber yet understood. They had not just destroyed a world or even a species. They had created a mystery that would haunt the galaxy. Because in their arrogance and certainty, they had made a fundamental error. They had assumed that Earth was humanity's only stronghold, that destroying one system would eliminate an entire species. They had calculated based on incomplete intelligence, acted on assumptions that felt reasonable, and declared victory based on preliminary results. The consequences of that error would reshape the galaxy in ways that no one, not even the ancient and wise Chairman Mordun, could yet imagine. 3 days after Ambassador Zektar's shocking announcement, the investigation fleet arrived at what had once been the Sol system. The joint task force included representatives from 12 different council species, led by Chief Investigator Velshan of the Scientific Caltheri Consortium. The scene that greeted them defied their worst expectations. Where Earth's star had once burned steadily for billions of years, only an expanding cloud of superheated plasma remained. The shockwave from the induced supernova had scattered debris across the entire system, turning planets, moons, and asteroids into microscopic particles of dust and vapor. Radiation levels confirm artificial stellar collapse, reported Science Officer Krendel from the investigation ship's sensor array. The quantum signatures matched theoretical models for forced supernova events. Velshan studied the readings with growing horror. The Caltheri were known throughout the galaxy for their scientific achievements and philosophical dedication to the preservation of knowledge. To them, the destruction of an entire species represented the permanent loss of unique cultural and biological information that could never be recovered. "Can we determine the exact method used?" she asked. Based on the quantum resonance patterns, it appears the Valkyrie used a series of coordinated bombs placed at strategic points around the star's core, Krendel replied. The timing was precise, they would have had only minutes to evacuate their own ships before the stellar collapse began. And the human population? Complete extinction. Nothing could have survived this level of stellar radiation and gravitational disruption. Every planet, space station, and ship in the system would have been vaporized instantly. Velshan made careful notes in her official report, but privately she felt sick. The clinical language of scientific investigation seemed inadequate to describe the magnitude of what had happened here. Billions of sentient beings had been murdered in the span of minutes. Sir, called Communication Officer Tyquna, were receiving a priority transmission from Nexus Prime. The holographic image of Chairman Mordun materialized in the investigation ship's command center. His ancient features looked even more weary than usual. "Chief Investigator, what can you confirm?" "Complete stellar destruction, Chairman. The Valkyrie claims appear to be accurate. The Sol system has been entirely sterilized." "Any survivors? Any evidence of evacuation efforts?" Velshan hesitated. "Sir, the humans had no advance warning and no technology capable of evacuating their entire population. Even if they had been given years to prepare, moving billions of people from a doomed star system would have been beyond their current capabilities." "I understand. Continue your investigation and return as soon as possible. The political situation here is deteriorating rapidly." After the transmission ended, Velshan ordered her team to conduct a thorough search of the debris field. It was largely pointless, nothing larger than a grain of sand could have survived the supernova, but scientific protocol demanded complete documentation. As they worked, intercepted communication fragments painted a picture of the final moments. Automated emergency broadcasts from Earth had detected the stellar instability and begun issuing evacuation alerts, but the timeline from first detection to total destruction was less than 18 minutes. "The humans never had a chance," whispered Krendel as he analyzed the last transmissions. Their early warning systems were actually quite sophisticated for their technological level, but you can't evacuate a planet in 18 minutes. "What about their space-based populations? Orbital stations, lunar colonies?" "All confirmed destroyed. The Luna colony was actually in the process of expanding when the attack occurred. They had nearly 50,000 people living and working there. Meanwhile, back on Nexus Prime, the political situation was indeed deteriorating. Ambassador Zektar had been busy during the 3 days since his announcement, meeting privately with representatives from nearly 24 council species. His message was consistent and compelling: the galaxy was changing, and those who allied with the Valkyrie Empire would benefit greatly from the new order. Several smaller species had already signed preliminary agreements for enhanced trade relationships and mutual protection pacts. The euphemistic language couldn't disguise what everyone understood: these were subjugation treaties dressed up as partnerships. The humans were just the beginning, Zektar explained to a group of delegates during one such meeting. There are dozens of other young species that pose potential threats to galactic stability. With our new weapons technology, we can ensure that civilization develops in an orderly, predictable manner. You're talking about preemptive genocide, accused Counselor Jexera of the Hive Collective. I'm talking about preventing future wars, Zektar replied smoothly. How many conflicts have we seen between species that discovered each other at similar technological levels? How much suffering could be prevented by ensuring that dangerous civilizations never reach the point where they can threaten peaceful ones? It was a seductive argument, especially for species that had experienced interstellar warfare in their past. The idea of preventing conflicts before they began appealed to many delegates who had seen the devastation that advanced warfare could bring. But not everyone was convinced. Counselor Thrixana had been organizing a resistance movement among the more ethically minded species. The Mellodi, despite their peaceful nature, had significant influence through their control of several major trade networks. What the Valkyrie are proposing is not peace, she argued during a secret meeting with allied delegates. It's tyranny enforced through the threat of complete annihilation. If we allow this precedent to stand, none of us are safe. But what can we do? Asked Counselor Yilmar. They've demonstrated the ability to destroy entire star systems. Our combined fleets can't protect us from weapons that target stellar cores. We can refuse to legitimize their actions, Thrixana replied. We can impose economic sanctions, refuse diplomatic recognition, and make it clear that genocide will not be tolerated in a civilized galaxy. And, when they decide we're the next threat to be eliminated? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Everyone knew that traditional defensive measures were useless against stellar manipulation weapons. If the Valkyrie decided that any species posed a threat to their new order, they could simply destroy that species' home star and claim it was necessary for galactic peace. On the 4th day after the investigation began, Chief Investigator Velshan made a discovery that changed everything. While conducting a final sweep of the outer system debris field, her sensors detected something that shouldn't have been possible: artificial structures that had somehow survived the stellar collapse. Krendal, are you seeing these readings? Confirmed. Metallic structures, approximately 2 kilometers in length, located in what was formerly the Kuiper Belt region. How could anything survive a supernova at that distance? Unknown. The radiation levels alone should have vaporized any known material. As they approached the mysterious objects, details became clearer. They were definitely artificial, with clean geometric lines that suggested advanced engineering. But the design was completely unfamiliar, unlike any technology in the galactic databases. Sir, called the communication officer, we're being scanned. Something is actively examining our ship. Before Velshan could respond, a new voice came through the communication system. It spoke in perfect galactic standard, but with an accent that sent chills through everyone who heard it. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Human Colonial Fleet. You are approaching restricted space. State your identity and intentions. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. It was impossible. The investigation had confirmed that nothing could have survived the stellar collapse. But the voice was undeniably real, and the scans were definitely coming from the mysterious structures. This is Chief Investigator Velshan of the Galactic Council Investigation Fleet, she finally replied. We were told that all humans in this system were destroyed. How is your survival possible? Destroyed? The human voice carried a mixture of confusion and growing anger. What are you talking about? And what happened to our star? Velshan realized with mounting horror that these humans apparently had no idea what had happened to Earth and the rest of their species. They had been away from the inner system when the attack occurred and were only now returning to find their entire civilization gone. Commander Chen, I need to ask you some difficult questions. How long have you been away from Earth? When did you last have contact with your home world? We've been on a deep space exploration mission for the past 6 months. We lost communication with Earth 3 days ago when we tried to establish contact for our return. We assumed it was a technical issue until we arrived here and found this. Commander, I'm afraid I have terrible news. Your homeworld and star were destroyed by weapons used by the Valkyrie Empire. According to our investigation, there were no survivors. The silence that followed lasted for nearly a minute. When Commander Chen spoke again, her voice was very different, cold, controlled, and carrying an undertone that made several members of Velshan's crew unconsciously step back from their stations. Are you telling me that someone murdered my entire species? I'm afraid so, Commander. The attack occurred 4 days ago. The Valkyrie used stellar manipulation weapons to cause your star to go supernova. The investigation confirms that no life in the inner system could have survived. Another long silence. Then, Chief Investigator, I'm going to need you to provide us with all the information you have about this attack. Everything. And I'm going to need it now. Commander, I understand your anger, but this is a council investigation. I cannot simply share classified information with Chief Investigator, the human voice interrupted, and now there was something in it that made Velshan's survival instincts scream warnings. Let me explain something to you. You are looking at the deep space vessels of the human colonial fleet. We are the people whose job it was to find new homes for our species when Earth became overcrowded. Velshan suddenly understood the implications. These weren't just random survivors, they were the humans responsible for establishing colonies beyond their home system. You're telling us, Commander Chen continued, that someone committed genocide against our people. You're telling us that our families, our friends, our entire civilization was murdered while we were away exploring the galaxy for their benefit. Do you really think we're going to politely wait for your bureaucratic process to run its course? Commander, please understand, the Council is already taking action against the Valkyrie Empire. Justice will be served through proper channels. Justice? The human's laugh was unlike anything Velshan had ever heard, bitter, cold, and somehow terrifying despite coming through a simple audio transmitter. Chief Investigator, you clearly don't understand humans very well. What do you mean? We don't wait for justice to be served. We serve it ourselves. The communication link went dead, leaving Velshan and her crew staring at readings that showed the human vessels were already moving, accelerating away from the debris field at velocities that their database said human technology couldn't achieve. Should we pursue them? Asked Krendal. Velshan considered the options. The humans were clearly operating technology far beyond what the Council's intelligence had indicated their species possessed. Their ships had somehow survived at the edge of a supernova, they were capable of speeds that exceeded known human capabilities, and they had just learned that their entire species had been the victim of genocide. No, she decided. We return to Nexus Prime immediately. The Council needs to know that the humans aren't extinct. But there are only a few ships. How much of a threat could they pose? Velshan looked at the readings showing the human vessels disappearing into hyperspace at impossible speeds. I don't know. But I have a feeling we're about to find out. As the investigation fleet prepared to return to Council space, nobody noticed the small monitoring devices that had been quietly attached to their ships while they communicated with the humans. The colonial fleet hadn't just learned about the destruction of their homeworld, they had also acquired detailed intelligence about Council ship technology, hyperspace navigation routes, and, most importantly, the exact location of the Valkyrie Empire's capital system. The hunt was about to begin. The emergency council session was called within hours of Chief Investigator Velshan's return to Nexus Prime. Her report had sent shockwaves through the entire station, the humans weren't extinct. Somehow, impossibly, survivors with advanced technology were still alive, and they had just learned that their entire species had been murdered. Chairman Mordun called the session to order with visible strain in his ancient features. The past week had aged him considerably as he struggled to maintain order among increasingly fractured council members. Chief Investigator Velshan will present her findings to the full council, he announced. Velshan took the central podium, her scientific training helping her maintain composure despite the magnitude of what she had to report. Distinguished delegates, I can confirm that the Sol system was completely destroyed by Valkyrie stellar manipulation weapons. However, we have discovered that human survivors exist outside the system. The chamber erupted in surprised conversations. Ambassador Zektar, who had been lounging confidently in his delegation section, suddenly sat upright, his four eyes focusing intently on Velshan. "How many survivors?" called out Counselor Rixel. "Unknown. We encountered what appeared to be a small fleet of deep space vessels. They identified themselves as the human colonial fleet and were clearly operating technology significantly more advanced than our intelligence estimates suggested." "How is that possible?" demanded Zektar. "Our intelligence indicated that humans were confined to their home system with only primitive space technology." Velshan turned to face the Valkyrie ambassador directly. "It appears your intelligence was incomplete, Ambassador. These humans possessed vessels capable of surviving at the edge of a supernova and achieving hyperspace velocities that exceed our estimates of their technological capabilities by significant margins." "What was their reaction when informed of the attack?" asked Counselor Thrixana. "They were displeased," Velshan replied carefully. "The human commander made it clear that they intended to pursue their own form of justice rather than waiting for council action." "Threats?" scoffed Zektar. "A few primitive survivors making threats? This changes nothing. The majority of their species is dead, their homeworld is destroyed, and their industrial base is gone. What can a handful of refugees do against the might of the Valkyrie Empire?" Chairman Mordun's telepathic voice carried a warning tone. "Ambassador, I would counsel against underestimating any species that has survived the destruction of their homeworld. Desperation and grief can make even peaceful beings extraordinarily dangerous." "The Valkyrie Empire has nothing to fear from human survivors," Zektar declared. "If they attempt any aggressive action, they will simply join the rest of their species in extinction." His casual dismissal of genocide made several delegates visibly uncomfortable, but it was Councillor Yilmar who spoke up. "Ambassador, are you seriously suggesting that you would commit further genocide?" "I'm suggesting that threats to galactic peace will be dealt with appropriately," Zektar replied. "The human survivors, if they exist, should be grateful that we're willing to let them live as long as they don't interfere with civilization." Unknown to the assembled delegates, the human survivors were far from grateful. 15 light-years away, in a star system that didn't appear on any council charts, Commander Sarachen stood in the command center of the CNV Retribution, the flagship of the human colonial fleet. The fleet that had once been tasked with finding new homes for humanity's expanding population had transformed overnight into something entirely different. The discovery of Earth's destruction had triggered protocols that most of the crew never knew existed, revealing capabilities that had been hidden even from the majority of human leadership. "Report," Chen ordered as she entered the tactical center. Admiral Marcus Torres, the overall fleet commander, looked up from a holographic display showing the galactic map. "We've confirmed the location of 17 human colonies outside the Sol system. Total population approximately 2 million. All colonies have been notified of Earth's destruction and have activated Defense Protocol Omega." "And our military assets?" "That's where it gets interesting, Sarah. The colonial supply caches contained equipment that goes far beyond anything we thought we had. Whoever planned our expansion mission was apparently much more paranoid about alien threats than they admitted." Chen studied the tactical displays. "Explain." Each colony was established with hidden military facilities, advanced weapons, ship construction capabilities, and technology that's at least 50 years ahead of what we thought was cutting edge. "It's like someone knew this day might come." "How is that possible?" Torres pulled up a classified file that had been unlocked when the emergency protocols activated. According to this, there was a secret faction within Earth's government that believed first contact with aliens would inevitably lead to conflict. They'd been preparing for interstellar war while the public thought we were just exploring for new homes. Chen read through the file with growing amazement. The colonial fleet hadn't been sent out to find new homes for excess population, they had been sent to establish hidden military bases in case humanity needed to fight a galactic war. Every colony ship had carried not just civilians and supplies, but advanced weapons and manufacturing equipment that could produce a fleet capable of challenging any alien empire. "They knew," she whispered. "Somehow, they knew we'd need this." "Gets better," Torres continued. "Remember how we lost communication with Earth 3 days before we arrived home? That wasn't a technical failure. Earth sent a coded message through our navigation system. They detected the incoming attack and tried to warn us." "Show me." The holographic display shifted to show the last transmission from Earth. It was brief, but the implications were staggering. Earth's intelligence services had detected Valkyrie ships moving into position around their star. The message contained everything Earth knew about the impending attack, including detailed intelligence about Valkyrie military capabilities and the location of their home system. They died knowing their killers would face retribution, Torres said quietly. Earth's final message wasn't a plea for help, it was a targeting package. Chen felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. The grief of losing her home world was still there, but it was being rapidly overwhelmed by something else. The men and women of Earth had faced certain death and used their final moments to ensure their killers could be found and punished. How long until our colonies can begin military production? The automated systems are already working. Conservative estimate is 6 months for a full fleet capable of challenging any known galactic power. But, Sarah, that's not the most interesting part. What do you mean? Torres smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. The Valkyrie aren't the only aliens who've been keeping secrets. According to Earth's intelligence files, there are at least a dozen council species that have been in contact with humanity for decades. This whole first contact scenario was theater. We've been watching galactic politics for 50 years. They knew about the mining operation? They knew about everything. The illegal mining, the Valkyrie Empire's expansion plans, which species could be trusted and which ones were threats. Earth's government has been playing a very long game. Shen studied the intelligence files, each revelation making her angrier. Humanity hadn't been innocent victims stumbling into galactic politics. They had been careful observers who understood exactly how dangerous the galaxy could be. The Valkyrie had attacked what they thought was a naive young species, but they had actually declared war on a civilization that had been preparing for exactly this scenario. Admiral, I want production estimates for every colony. I want to know exactly what we can build and how fast we can build it. And I want intelligence reports on every single Valkyrie military installation in the galaxy. Already working on it. But, Sarah, there's something else you need to see. Torres activated another display showing dozens of signal intercepts. We're not the only ones interested in the Valkyrie. Since the attack on Earth, we've detected at least 8 different alien governments conducting covert surveillance of Valkyrie space. Seems like humanity wasn't the only species that found their expansion concerning. Potential allies? Maybe. Or maybe they're just waiting to see who wins before picking a side. But, the point is, the Valkyrie Empire isn't as united or as powerful as they want everyone to believe. They've made a lot of enemies over the years. Chen nodded slowly. Then, we exploit that. Find out which species have grievances against the Valkyrie. Find out which ones can be convinced to join a coalition. And find out which council members are secretly supporting Valkyrie expansion. And, if they refuse to help? Then, they stay out of our way or they become targets too. The Valkyrie think they can commit genocide and face no consequences. We're going to teach them otherwise. Meanwhile, in Valkyrie space, Ambassador Zektar was returning to his empire's capital world with a growing sense that his perfect plan might have some complications. The existence of human survivors was unexpected, but manageable. What concerned him more were reports of unusual activity along the empire's borders. Report, he ordered as he arrived at the Imperial Military Command Center. General Klexhar, the Empire's chief military strategist, looked unusually worried. Sir, we're detecting increased surveillance activity from several directions. Multiple species appear to be conducting intelligence gathering operations along our borders. Concerning the human situation? Unknown. But, the timing suggests they're reassessing our military capabilities in light of our demonstration of stellar weapons. Zektar considered this. Fear? Possibly. Or they could be evaluating us as a potential threat to be neutralized before we become too powerful. Let them evaluate. Our stellar manipulation weapons make traditional military power obsolete. If any species attempts aggressive action against us, we can simply destroy their home systems. Sir, there is one other concern. The humans we failed to eliminate, our intelligence was clearly incomplete about their capabilities. If they have technology that can survive stellar destruction, they might possess other capabilities we're unaware of. A few survivors with hidden technology are not a threat to an empire, Zektar declared. If necessary, we'll hunt them down and finish the job properly. But, even as he spoke, Zektar couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something important. The humans had seemed so primitive during their brief contact, yet they apparently possessed technology that contradicted everything the Valkyrie intelligence services had reported. What else had they gotten wrong about humanity? The answer to that question was already approaching Valkyrie space at velocities that would have been impossible for ships using known propulsion technology. The human colonial fleet had spent generations preparing for interstellar war, and, now that war was coming to those who had started it. In the depths of space, automated manufacturing platforms were churning out weapons that no galactic government had ever seen, guided by tactical plans developed by Earth's most brilliant military minds. The Valkyrie Empire had murdered a peaceful civilization and thought they faced no consequences. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. The first sign that something was wrong came from the Valkyrie border monitoring station at Kextol Prime. Senior Watch Commander Velshantar was reviewing routine patrol reports when her sensors detected unusual gravity distortions in the supposedly empty space beyond their territorial boundary. Analysis, she demanded from her sensor operator. Unknown, Commander. The distortions suggest large mass objects, but we're not detecting any ships or installations. It's like something massive is out there, but invisible to our scanners. Run a full spectrum analysis. Check for cloaking technology. Already did. Whatever's out there isn't using any cloaking method in our databases. Before Velshantar could respond, space itself seemed to ripple, and, suddenly, dozens of ships materialized where empty void had been moments before. The vessels were sleek, angular, and, completely unfamiliar, nothing like any design in the Valkyrie intelligence files. Red alert. Unknown fleet detected. Estimated 47 vessels of various sizes. Are they responding to communication attempts? Negative. They're not acknowledging our hails. Velshantar studied the tactical display with growing alarm. The unknown ships had appeared in perfect formation, suggesting coordination and planning that indicated this wasn't a random encounter. Someone had been watching the border station and had chosen this moment to reveal themselves. "Sir," called the communication operator, "we're receiving a transmission. Audio only. Put it through." A human voice filled the command center, speaking in heavily accented Valkyrie. "Attention Valkyrie border station. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Human Retribution Fleet. You are hereby ordered to evacuate all personnel immediately." Velshantar felt her blood freeze. Humans. The supposedly extinct species that Ambassador Zektar had assured them was no longer a threat. Unknown vessels, this is Commander Velshantar of the Valkyrie Imperial Border Guard. You are in violation of Imperial space. Withdraw immediately or face defensive action. Commander, let me be very clear. You have exactly 10 minutes to evacuate your station. After that, we will demonstrate what happens to those who support genocide. This is Imperial territory. You have no authority here. We have the authority of the dead. Every human killed in your Empire's attack on Earth has given us the right to seek justice. You have 9 minutes. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Velshantar's mind raced through options, none of them good. The border station was heavily armed, but 47 ships represented firepower that could overwhelm their defenses. And if these were the same humans that had somehow survived the destruction of their home system, they might possess technology far beyond Valkyrie estimates. Contact Imperial Command, she ordered. Tell them we have human survivors conducting hostile action at Kextol Prime. Sir, should we begin evacuation procedures? Velshantar hesitated. Evacuating in the face of human threats would be seen as cowardice by Imperial Command. But, keeping her crew aboard a station that was about to be attacked by unknown weapons seemed like suicide. Begin emergency evacuation of non-essential personnel. All others, prepare for combat. Meanwhile, aboard the CNV Retribution, Commander Sarachen watched the Valkyrie station's response with grim satisfaction. The partial evacuation suggested that at least some of their enemies had enough sense to recognize a serious threat. 8 minutes until deadline, reported her tactical officer. Any response from the Valkyrie fleet? 3 cruisers are moving to intercept, ETA 12 minutes. Too slow. Captain Vasquez, proceed with demonstration. On the bridge of the CNV Vengeance, Captain Elena Vasquez nodded to her weapons officer. Target the station's primary power core. Single shot, minimum yield. Target locked. Firing. The weapon that struck Kextol Prime was unlike anything the Valkyrie had ever encountered. Instead of the explosive force they expected, the station simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, heavily shielded and armed with the Empire's most advanced defensive systems. The next moment, there was only empty space and expanding particles of matter so fine they barely registered on sensors. What was that weapon?" whispered Velshantar from her evacuation ship. Her science officer was frantically analyzing sensor data. Unknown energy signature. The station's molecular structure appears to have been disassembled. At the atomic level. The implications hit everyone aboard the evacuation ships simultaneously. The humans possessed weapons that could destroy matter itself, reducing ships and stations to their component atoms in seconds. No shield technology could defend against weapons that operated at the molecular level. "Get us out of here," Velshantar ordered. "Maximum speed back to Imperial space." But Captain Vasquez wasn't finished with her demonstration. "Attention Valkyrie vessels. Your border station has been eliminated. You will now deliver a message to your government." "We're listening," Velshantar replied, her voice shaking despite her efforts to maintain composure. "Tell your leaders that humanity has returned. Tell them that we have learned of the atrocity committed against our home world. And tell them that justice is coming." "What do you want?" "We want the individuals responsible for ordering the destruction of Earth. We want them delivered to us for trial. And we want reparations for the families of 8 billion murdered civilians. And if the Empire refuses? Then we will take what we want by force. Your choice is whether this ends with the punishment of the guilty or the destruction of your entire civilization." The human fleet vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving the Valkyrie evacuation ships alone in space where their border station had been. The message was clear: humanity now possessed technology that made Valkyrie defenses obsolete, and they were prepared to use it. Within hours, the news of the border station's destruction reached the Imperial capital. Ambassador Zektar, recently returned from the council session where he had dismissed human survivors as insignificant, found himself summoned to an emergency meeting with Emperor Kolvash himself. "Explain to me," the Emperor said without preamble, "how a species you assured me was extinct just destroyed one of our border installations using weapons our science teams cannot identify." Zektar struggled to maintain his composure. "Your Majesty, this is clearly a terrorist attack by a small group of survivors. Their capabilities, while impressive, cannot match the full might of the Empire. Our intelligence reports indicate they possessed a fleet of nearly 50 vessels, all using technology that appears to be centuries ahead of what we believed humans had developed. How do you explain this discrepancy?" "Human deception, Majesty. They clearly hid their true capabilities while pretending to be a primitive species. Or our intelligence services are incompetent," the Emperor replied coldly. "General Klexhar, what is your military assessment?" The general stepped forward, his tactical training evident in every movement. "Majesty, the weapon used against Kextol Prime represents a fundamental breakthrough in destructive technology. If humans can deploy such weapons at scale, traditional military responses may be inadequate. Are you suggesting we cannot defend against these survivors?" "I'm suggesting we need to understand their capabilities before deciding on a response. The destruction of a heavily shielded border station in seconds indicates they possess science that exceeds our current understanding." Emperor Kolvash turned back to Zektar. "You initiated this conflict by destroying their home world. You assured me there would be no consequences. Now we face an enemy with unknown capabilities seeking what they call justice. How do you propose we resolve this situation?" "We use our stellar manipulation weapons," Zektar replied confidently. "Find their colony worlds and destroy them as we destroyed Earth. End the threat permanently. And if they have defenses against stellar weapons? What if their technology can protect entire systems from stellar manipulation?" Zektar hadn't considered that possibility. Surely no technology could defend against induced supernovas. "A week ago, you would have said no technology could survive induced supernovas," General Klexhar observed. "Yet humans clearly possess ships that can withstand stellar destruction. Perhaps we should consider the possibility that they have other capabilities we don't understand." Before the Emperor could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. An aide rushed in with urgent news. "Majesty! Human ships have been detected simultaneously at 7 different border systems. They're demanding the evacuation of all Imperial installations and threatening to demonstrate their weapons again. How many ships? Over 300, Majesty. They appear to have assembled a significant fleet in the time since Earth's destruction. Emperor Kolvash absorbed this information with visible concern. A few dozen survivors had become a fleet of hundreds in less than a week. Either humanity had hidden resources far beyond what anyone had imagined, or they possessed technology that could manufacture ships at unprecedented rates. Your Majesty, General Klexar said carefully, I recommend we open communications with the human leadership. Perhaps a diplomatic solution can be reached. You're suggesting we negotiate with terrorists? Zektar demanded. I'm suggesting we avoid a war with an enemy whose capabilities we don't understand, the general replied. Especially when that enemy has legitimate grievances against us. Legitimate? They're an inferior species that should be grateful we allowed them to survive as long as they did. The Emperor raised a clawed hand for silence. General Klexar makes a valid point. We destroyed their homeworld and killed their civilians. From their perspective, they are seeking justice for genocide. Perhaps we should consider what they actually want. They want to put Empire officials on trial for war crimes, the aide reported. They're demanding the extradition of those responsible for ordering the attack on Earth. All eyes turned to Zektar, who suddenly realized that he was the primary target of human justice. The attack on Earth had been his idea, planned and executed under his authority. If anyone was going to face human justice, it would be him. Majesty, surely you won't consider surrendering Imperial citizens to alien judgment. I'll consider whatever prevents the destruction of the Empire, the Emperor replied coldly. How many more ships do the humans have? How many more weapons? What else don't we know about their capabilities? We could find out, suggested General Klexar. A diplomatic mission could assess their true strength while opening negotiations. Or we could end this now, Zektar countered desperately. Use our stellar weapons to destroy their colonies before they can strike again. Show the galaxy that the Valkyrie Empire doesn't negotiate with terrorists. And, if we fail, the Emperor asked. If they can defend their colonies from stellar weapons? What then, Ambassador? Zektar had no answer. The perfect plan that had seemed so brilliant a week ago was collapsing around him. The humans weren't supposed to have survived. They weren't supposed to have advanced technology. And, they certainly weren't supposed to be capable of threatening the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Your Majesty, he finally said, perhaps a limited diplomatic contact might provide useful intelligence while we prepare military options. Excellent. General, arrange for a diplomatic mission to the humans. Find out what they really want and what they're actually capable of. And, if diplomacy fails? Then, we discover whether human weapons can destroy entire star systems as efficiently as they destroy border stations. But, in the depths of space, Admiral Torres was reviewing reports that would have terrified the Valkyrie leadership even more than they already were. The human fleets that had appeared at 7 border systems were just the beginning. Hidden throughout the galaxy, human colonies were activating weapons and defenses that had been built in secret over decades. Earth's destruction hadn't weakened humanity, it had triggered the largest military mobilization in galactic history. And, the Valkyrie Empire was about to discover that some species, when pushed to the brink of extinction, don't retreat. They evolve. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened under circumstances no one had imagined possible just days earlier. Reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. Human fleets had appeared at strategic locations throughout Valkyrie space, demonstrating weapons technology that made every species recalculate their understanding of galactic power dynamics. Chairman Mordun called for order as representatives took their seats, many looking shaken by the rapid developments. The chamber's atmosphere was thick with tension and barely suppressed panic. Before we begin, the chairman announced, I must inform the council that we have received a formal communication from the human colonial government. They have requested the opportunity to address this assembly. Ambassador Zektar, who had arrived with a full security detail, shot to his feet. Absolutely not. We will not give terrorists a platform to spread their propaganda. The humans are not recognized terrorists, Councillor Thrixana replied firmly. They are the survivors of genocide seeking justice through established diplomatic channels. They destroyed a Valkyrie border station. Zektar protested. After giving advance warning and time for evacuation, she countered. No lives were lost in their demonstration. The same cannot be said for your attack on Earth. Before the argument could escalate further, the chamber's main display activated, showing the image of a woman in a military uniform that no one recognized. Her bearing was professional, but her eyes held something that made several delegates unconsciously lean back in their seats. Distinguished members of the Galactic Council, Admiral Sarachan began. I am Admiral Sarachan of the Human Colonial Defense Force. I speak for the 2 million human survivors of the Valkyrie Empire's unprovoked attack on our home world. 2 million, whispered Councillor Rixel. Our intelligence suggested much smaller numbers. Admiral Chen continued as if she had heard the comment. For the past 50 years, humanity has maintained a presence in this galaxy while carefully observing the political dynamics and potential threats to peaceful species. We established colonies not just for expansion, but as insurance against exactly the kind of genocidal attack we have now experienced. The implications of this statement sent murmurs throughout the chamber. Humanity hadn't been the naive species that had stumbled into galactic politics, they had been systematic observers and planners. During this time, Chen continued, we documented numerous instances of Valkyrie aggression, illegal territorial expansion, and violations of Council law. We also observed the Council's repeated failure to take meaningful action against these violations. Chairman Mordun's telepathic voice carried a defensive tone. The Council operates through consensus and established procedures. Justice takes time. Justice delayed is justice denied, Chairman. And genocide demands immediate response. Chen's gaze fixed directly on Ambassador Zektar. We have come before this council to present evidence of war crimes committed by the Valkyrie Empire and to demand the extradition of those responsible. The Valkyrie Empire does not recognize your authority to make such demands, Zektar declared. Then, let me clarify our position, Chen replied coldly. We are not requesting cooperation. We are informing you of our intentions as a courtesy before we proceed. She gestured, and the display shifted to show tactical information that made several military representatives sit up in alarm. These are the current positions of human military assets throughout the galaxy. As you can see, we have the capability to enforce our demands with or without Council cooperation. The display showed hundreds of ships positioned at strategic locations, with particular concentrations around Valkyrie space. But what shocked the assembled delegates was the scope of the deployment. Human forces appeared to be operating in star systems that most council members didn't know were inhabited. How is this possible? Demanded Councillor Rixel. Our intelligence indicated humans were confined to their home system. Your intelligence was deliberately incomplete, Chen replied. Humanity learned early in our observation of galactic politics that transparency is often fatal. We allowed you to see what we wanted you to see while building defenses against the day someone might decide we were a threat to be eliminated. Ambassador Zektar's 4 eyes narrowed as he processed this revelation. You've been spying on council members for decades? We've been protecting ourselves from council members who might prove hostile. Recent events have validated that precaution. What exactly are you demanding? Chairman Mordun asked. The individuals responsible for planning and ordering the attack on Earth will surrender themselves for trial under human jurisdiction. Reparations will be paid for the lives lost and the civilization destroyed. And the Valkyrie Empire will submit to international oversight to prevent future genocidal actions. Preposterous! Zektar shouted. The Empire will never submit to alien jurisdiction. Then, the Empire will cease to exist, Chen replied matter-of-factly. We have demonstrated that your defensive capabilities cannot protect you from our weapons. We can eliminate your border stations, your military installations, and, if necessary, your entire infrastructure. You're threatening to commit genocide yourselves. We're threatening to commit justice. There is a difference. Councillor Yilmar leaned forward. Admiral Chen, surely some diplomatic solution can be reached. Further violence serves no one's interests. Diplomacy requires good faith from both parties, Chen replied. The Valkyrie Empire has demonstrated that it believes genocide is an acceptable diplomatic tool. We intend to teach them otherwise. And if the Council supports a negotiated settlement, asked Frixana. Then, we will work within Council frameworks to achieve justice. But, make no mistake, justice will be achieved one way or another. The only question is whether it comes through law or through force. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in tense silence. The human message had been delivered with the kind of calm certainty that suggested they had already decided on their course of action and were simply informing others of the consequences. "This changes everything," Councillor Rixell muttered. Chairman Mordun nodded gravely. "Indeed. We are no longer dealing with a complaint from victims. We are dealing with a species that has demonstrated both the capability and willingness to enforce their demands through military action. They're terrorists," Zektar insisted. "We cannot negotiate with terrorists. They're survivors of genocide seeking justice," Thrixana corrected. "And they've demonstrated remarkable restraint so far. They could have simply begun destroying Valkyrie installations without warning." "What do you mean, restraint?" Zektar demanded. General Klexhar, who had been reviewing intelligence reports during the human transmission, looked up with visible concern. "Ambassador, our border monitoring stations have detected human fleet movements throughout Imperial space. They appear to have the capability to strike any target in the Empire simultaneously. So, we have stellar manipulation weapons, which require time to deploy and specific positioning," the general replied. "Their weapons appear to be capable of instantaneous application at any target within their range." The strategic implications were becoming clear to the military representatives in the chamber. Humanity had developed weapons that could strike faster than the Valkyrie could deploy their stellar weapons, and they had apparently been positioning assets for this confrontation while the Empire celebrated their genocide. "How do we proceed?" asked Chairman Mordun. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency broadcasts filled the chamber as automated systems announced an unprecedented event. "Attention all stations, multiple stellar manipulation attempts have been detected and neutralized in Valkyrie space. Repeat, stellar weapons have been intercepted and disabled." The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates realized what this meant. The Valkyrie Empire had apparently attempted to use their stellar weapons against human targets, and the humans had somehow prevented the attacks from succeeding. Ambassador Zektar was frantically communicating with Imperial Command through his personal communicator. His face grew paler with each exchange. "What's happening?" demanded Chairman Mordun. The Empire attempted to destroy 3 human colony systems," Zektar admitted reluctantly. "The stellar weapons were deployed according to standard procedure. And they failed. The human colonies appear to have some kind of stellar defense technology. Our weapons were neutralized before they could affect the target stars." The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Not only did humanity possess weapons that could destroy Valkyrie installations instantly, but they also had defenses that could neutralize the Empire's most powerful weapons. The technological advantage that had made the Valkyrie Empire dominant in the galaxy had just been rendered obsolete. Furthermore, Zektar continued with visible difficulty, human forces have responded by eliminating several of our military installations. The attacks were precise, surgical, and appear to have deliberately avoided civilian casualties. "How many installations?" asked General Klexhar. 17 strategic military bases, 4 weapons research facilities, and our primary fleet construction yard. The numbers represented a significant portion of the Valkyrie Empire's military infrastructure. In a matter of hours, humanity had demonstrated the ability to cripple the Empire's military capabilities while protecting their own assets from the most advanced weapons the galaxy had ever seen. "It appears," Chairman Mordun observed, "that the balance of power in this galaxy has shifted dramatically." Councillor Thrixana stood slowly. "I call for an immediate council resolution condemning the genocide committed against humanity and demanding Valkyrie compliance with human demands for justice." "Seconded," called Councillor Yilmar. "This is a travesty," Zektar protested. "You're legitimizing terrorism." "We're acknowledging reality," Thrixana replied. "Humanity has demonstrated the capability to enforce their demands regardless of council decisions. The question is whether we facilitate a just resolution or allow this conflict to escalate further." The vote, when it came, was decisive. 38 species voted to condemn the Valkyrie genocide and support human demands for justice. Only 6 species voted against the resolution, and most of those abstained rather than actively opposing it. Ambassador Zektar found himself isolated, his empire's dominance shattered in the span of a few hours. The stellar weapons that had made them the galaxy's most feared power were useless against human defenses, and their military infrastructure was being systematically dismantled by weapons they couldn't understand or counter. "The vote is recorded," Chairman Mordun announced. "Ambassador Zektar, you have 72 hours to produce those responsible for ordering the attack on Earth. If you fail to comply, this council will not interfere with human enforcement actions." As the session ended and delegates began filing out, many casting nervous glances at the Valkyrie delegation, Zektar realized that his perfect plan had not just failed, it had doomed his entire empire. In attempting to eliminate a perceived threat through genocide, he had awakened an enemy that possessed technology far beyond anything the galaxy had imagined. The humans weren't just seeking justice. They had fundamentally altered the balance of power in the galaxy, demonstrating that peaceful species could be more dangerous than warlike ones if pushed too far. And, now, as reports continued to arrive of human fleets systematically dismantling Valkyrie military assets across the galaxy, it was becoming clear that humanity's long period of quiet observation was over. They had emerged from the shadows with capabilities that made them the dominant military power in known space. The galaxy would never be the same. And, for those who had committed genocide, justice was no longer a distant possibility, it was an approaching certainty backed by technology that made resistance futile. The age of human dominance had begun, born from the ashes of Earth and tempered by the determination of survivors who refused to let genocide go unpunished. The Valkyrie Empire had awakened something they didn't understand, and now they would face the consequences of their actions. Justice, as the humans had promised, was coming.